And let's talk about Islam now, because that in some ways is even more relevant to our times today. Historically,
Yeah,
maybe not, but today for sure. You also said in our conversation last week that if you don't know the three words Dar al-Islam, then you do not understand the conflict, which of course in English means the House of
absolutely.
Islam. Talk to
Yeah.
us about that.
Well, first of all, Islamic anti-Semitism is different. It was rarely as intense as Christian or secular nationalist or communist anti-Semitism. The European ideologies were much worse for Jews than Islamic ideologies. Islamic, it was largely being a bit subjugated, in some places more, in some places less, like being treated as second class, or the famous dhimmi issue, and the big debates over how bad was it to be a dhimmi. It was essentially it was apartheid, but as Jews, that was quite good. We were quite happy to be just like treated as second class citizens, and generally speaking, and we didn't have the same tensions. Again, sometimes it did become massacres, sometimes it did become forced conversions. But if you kind of take the gap between massacres in our history under Muslims was much, much bigger than any of the gaps in the European and any of the European ideologies. And the level of persecution on average was much, much less. But yeah, I always say to people, if you do not know these three words, as you said, then you haven't begun to understand the Arab Israel and the Palestinian Israel conflict. And they are Dar al-Islam. And if people right now having to Google those words, at least acknowledge that for 128 years there's been a war going on since before the State of Israel, 28 years before the State of Israel began, right? 104 years it's been going on, 28 years before the State of Israel began. And the main thing they've been fighting over, whoever didn't know those words beforehand has not been aware of. The fight was not Jews coming to the land, kicking Arabs out of their homes. Jews came to the land Jews were always in the land on some level, but they came on larger populations in the 1880s, and people weren't being kicked out of their homes. They were buying the land. The Ottoman Empire was letting them have land, typically involving land that couldn't be farmed. Often that's why Ottomans would give them land only on condition they take, swamp land that can't be farmed as well. And they were doing it. And there were definitely tenant farmers who'd been owners of the land who were losing losing jobs and things like that as a result, but no one was being kicked out of homes. That wasn't the story. And that went on all the way, and the Ottoman Empire was crumbling, and states were about to be created that had never been created before, right? You can run across the Middle East and see states that had never existed in the history of the world, like Kuwait or Iraq or Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and Israel could be in that. Israel, ironically, could be the one that had existed before. There was plenty in this gigantic Ottoman Empire. There was plenty of room to make a tiny little slither in the old Jewish homeland, in the unpopulated areas, to put the Jewish people in. That was not the issue. What happened in 1920 was that the Mufti of Jerusalem, right, who exactly how he got to his position of power is a whole other story. But Amin al-Husseini, or Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Holy One, decided there's a big problem here. This is the Dar al-Islam. This is part of the Islamic world. These are lands that have been under Islamic domination and are not allowed to go to the Kufr. They cannot go to the heretic. Okay, whether the Jews, the heretic or not, who knows? But it cannot go under non-Islamic rule. And that's why he instigated the 1920 Nebi Musa riots, the first mass coordinated attacks on Jewish communities in the land of Israel. Right? That's where it began. And that has been the conflict ever since. Right? The conflict has been, can we have a non-Islamic state in this land? And that's why you can go to the streets of London and interview all these fanatics protesting. Right? You can go to the Hamas and ask them a simple question. The Hamas obviously wasn't there in 1920, but it's an heir to that ideology that's been there all along. Right? And you can ask them a simple question. Would you rather option A, there's a Palestinian state with full free Palestine? You got it all free. It's all free. You might even be a liberal democracy if you want that. It can be an Islamic radical state if you want that. Whatever you want, right? In the West Bank, in Gaza, and take back chunks of Israel, 1947 borders, go further than that, push all the way to the Peel Commission borders. Just one little bit of land that is not under Islamic control. That's option one. Option two, no free Palestine. The Palestinians live under subjugation, but Muslim forces from somewhere else come in and take over the land. Maybe Syria takes the whole thing, or Jordan, or Egypt, or the Arab League, or the restoration of the Ottoman Empire. Which would you rather? A free Palestine, but there's a little bit of land in which there's non-Muslim control? Or a non-free Palestine, but there's no non-Muslim control? And without a moment's hesitation, the average guy shrieking and screaming in the fanatical jihadis who are protesting will absolutely say put under Islamic control. We don't need a free Palestine. We need it free from non-Muslim control. That's what we need it from, right? They don't need independence of Palestinian people. That's not relevant. Which is why the original Palestine National Movement was created in 1964. The PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, was created by the Arab League in 1964. And it did not include the West Bank, and it did not include Gaza. It was the rest of Israel. So, and that's not, I'm not arguing against Palestinian national rights, and I'm not arguing that they shouldn't try to find some kind of solution where there is a free Palestinian state if they could make peace with Israel, all that kind of stuff. I'm very supportive of finding some kind of way to do that if we could. But the point is that people are like, why doesn't Israel just give them a land? The short answer is because their plan would be to destroy the state of Israel. Yeah. Not to raid the border and kill a few people, right? If Israel gives back land right now, the entire state of Israel is destroyed. The lands that it would give back, the West Bank overlooks, from there to the beach is 9 miles at its narrowest. You can't defend territory like that. So this is the problem Israel's been facing from the beginning. This is the conflict. And this is what's motivating. This is what motivates hundreds of thousands of people to get out the streets and shriek and scream. It's not about Palestinian rights. It's about the fact that it's Dar al-Islam.